In the spring of 1973, the residents of Enfield, Illinois, would find themselves haunted by a mysterious and terrifying encounter. It all began on a quiet evening, just after 9:30, when a man named Henry McDaniel heard an unusual sound outside his home. Stepping onto his porch, Henry scanned the darkness, his heart pounding as he tried to locate the source of the noise. And then, there it was, a creature lurking just beyond the reach of the light. What he saw defied all logic. The creature stood there with 3 legs, a short, stocky body, and 2 stubby arms. But perhaps the most unsettling feature were its eyes, 2 large pink orbs, glowing in the night, as bright as flashlights. Henry could only stare, paralyzed by fear. Whatever this was, it didn't belong in his yard or anywhere on Earth. Quickly, he retreated inside and contacted the local authorities. When officers arrived, they scoured the area for any sign of the creature, but it had vanished without a trace. Yet, there were clues left behind. Deep scratches marred Henry's screen door, and in the dirt beneath the porch, they found strange footprints. They looked almost like a dog's, but with 6 distinct toes. The police could find no explanation, and despite further investigation, the creature was never seen again. But Henry remained convinced of what he had witnessed. He told reporters, if they do find it, they will find more than one, and they won't be from this planet. To this day, the strange encounter remains a mystery. The creature, if it existed, left no trace beyond Henry's yard. No further sightings, no answers, only questions. And so, the people of Enfield were left with an unsettling reminder of the unknown. What did Henry McDaniel see that night? A strange visitor from beyond, or a figment of his imagination? The Enfield monster remains an unsolved mystery, buried in the shadows of a quiet Illinois town. In January 2013, 21-year-old Elisa Lam embarked on what should have been an exciting adventure, a solo trip along the west coast of the United States. She kept a travel blog, sharing snippets of her journey, from city views to cafe visits, and called her parents daily to check in. But on January 31st, 2013, Elisa's calls stopped. She was last seen in the lobby of the Cecil Hotel, a once grand building in downtown Los Angeles that had fallen into disrepair, becoming infamous for its dark history and rumors of hauntings. When Elisa vanished, her family grew desperate. The police got involved, and searches were conducted throughout the hotel and city. Despite their best efforts, they found no trace of her. Weeks passed, and then, in February, the LAPD released footage from an elevator security camera in a final attempt to find Elisa. The video was chilling. It showed Elisa stepping into the hotel's elevator, looking disoriented. She pressed several buttons, yet the elevator doors wouldn't close. She appeared to be hiding, crouching in the corner, peering out cautiously as though someone were outside. Someone, or something, that the camera didn't capture. At one point, she gestured wildly as if communicating with someone only she could see. The footage baffled the public. Speculations erupted. Was she suffering a mental breakdown? Could she have been under the influence of something sinister? Or was it possible that Elisa Lam was encountering something supernatural? The mystery deepened when, around the same time, guests at the Cecil Hotel began reporting problems with the water supply. They described the water coming out black at first, then returning to normal. Guests complained about an awful taste and an unsettling odor. Yet, despite the strange experiences, most guests brushed it off, assuming it was just an issue with the old building. On the morning of February 19th, hotel maintenance workers finally decided to inspect the rooftop water tanks. hoping to find the source of the water contamination. What they found was horrifying. Inside one of the tanks, floating lifelessly, was Elisa Lam's decomposing body. Her clothes and belongings lay nearby, soaked in the same water that had flowed through the hotel's pipes. Her tragic death was officially labeled an accident after an autopsy, with no sign of foul play. Yet, the question lingered. How had she managed to access the roof and enter the heavy water tank? The rooftop was locked, alarmed, and the tank hatch was heavy and difficult to reach. Theories continued to swirl, but the mystery of Elisa Lam's final moments remained unanswered. Adding to the eerie allure of the story, the Cecil Hotel itself had a long, dark past. The Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, infamous for his string of brutal murders in the 1980s, had lived there. In 1991, Jack Unterweger, an international serial killer, stayed at the Cecil while committing his own crimes. Even decades earlier, in 1962, a woman leapt from a hotel window, killing herself and a passerby on the street below. The tragic death of Elisa Lam added a new chapter to the hotel's haunted history, a chapter steeped in mystery, heartbreak, and the unanswered questions of a young life lost too soon. In June of 2012, an unsettling story unfolded near St. Petersburg, Florida, leaving a community shocked and horrified. Danielle Harkins, a 35-year-old schoolteacher, began acting strangely. Friends noticed her behavior shift, her sudden obsession with demonic rituals. But what started as an odd fascination would soon spiral into something much darker, something sinister. Harkins was arrested after police discovered she had abused 7 former students in a disturbing attempt to purge them of demons. On a Saturday evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Harkins gathered the group near a small fire by the St. Petersburg Pier. There, she instructed the teens on a twisted ritual she claimed would free them from evil spirits. To rid themselves of these demons, she told them, they had to cut their skin and burn the wounds to ensure the spirits wouldn't return. What happened next was nothing short of horrific. When Harkins attempted to hold a lighter to one boy's hand, the wind blew out the flame. Undeterred, she took a bottle of perfume, drenched his hand, and ignited it. The boy screamed in pain, suffering second-degree burns. Another teenager endured a similar ordeal. She took a broken bottle and slashed his neck, then heated a key with fire and pressed it against his skin to cauterize the wound. A chilling silence followed. None of the students dared tell their parents. None would speak to the authorities. The truth only surfaced after a friend of one of the teens grew suspicious and alerted the police. Danielle Harkins was arrested for aggravated battery and child abuse. Investigators were left with questions, and Harkins refused to explain her motivations. When questioned, she never clarified what beliefs drove her to such drastic haunting measures. In a quiet town, on a quiet night, fear and confusion still linger, as no one knows what darkness possessed Danielle Harkins, or what she hoped to achieve through her twisted rituals. In September 2014, a quiet Utah neighborhood was shaken by an unimaginable discovery. A teenage boy, just returning home, walked through the door, expecting the ordinary hum of family life. Instead, he found an eerie silence, a house draped in the weight of death. His parents and 3 siblings were gone. They had all died together, leaving no clear explanation behind. Police arrived to investigate and quickly realized this was no ordinary tragedy. As they searched the house, they found a notebook, as if mocking the ordinary routine of life. Inside was a to-do list. common things one might check off before going on vacation. Feed the pets. Find someone to watch the house. Simple tasks, scribbled out in the handwriting of parents who should have been planning for the future. But in these hollow halls, that future was nowhere to be found. Days turned into months, and the police struggled to understand what could drive two parents to such an unthinkable act. No suicide note was left, no warning signs, no clues that would explain why a family would turn in on itself in this way. The community mourned, questions hanging unanswered. Then, almost a year later, in January, more disturbing details came to light. Family and friends spoke to investigators, sharing pieces of a tragic puzzle. The Stracks, it turned out, harbored a deep fear of the world's end. A darkness had crept into their lives, one that fed on a twisted belief. They were convinced that the apocalypse was drawing near. Obsessed with escaping the world they saw as corrupt and doomed, they yearned for a place away from society, somewhere off the grid. But there was something even more sinister lurking behind their fears. Christy Strack had become entangled in a strange connection with one of Utah's most notorious convicted killers, Dan Lafferty, a man infamous for his role in a brutal, faith-fueled double murder decades earlier. Lafferty, who claimed divine revelation, had killed his sister-in-law and her infant daughter in a horrifying act that shocked the state. And yet, Christy found herself drawn to him, visiting him in prison, writing him letters. His twisted ideology fed into her and her husband's fears, compounding their obsession. In the end, police could only piece together fragments of the Strack's final days, the chilling clues left behind. A life cut short for reasons that may never truly be understood. But one thing is certain. In their desperate search for safety from a world they saw as dangerous, they succumbed to a darkness far greater than the one they feared. And in that quiet Utah neighborhood, the echoes of that night linger, a chilling reminder of the human mind's capacity for horror, even under its own roof. It was 2007. Several families across Faircrest, Washington, began receiving phone calls that no one could explain and no one could stop. These weren't just prank calls. They were chillingly specific death threats. Strangers, hidden in the shadows, who knew exactly what each family was doing, what they were wearing, and even who was in their home. The Kuykendall family was among those terrorized by these calls. Day or night, their phones would ring, and on the other end, a scratchy, distorted voice would hiss out threats that went far beyond fear. The caller vowed to kill their children, harm their pets, even target their grandparents. It was personal, intensely, horrifyingly personal. But what made it worse was that the caller seemed to know everything. He could describe their exact clothing, their location, and their actions as if he were right there, watching from the shadows. And sometimes, he even was. The calls escalated, not just random threats, but eerie recordings of private conversations. Conversations the Kuykendalls had only in the safety of their own home. There was even a recording of them talking to a detective investigating the case. Somehow, the caller knew everything, and no one could understand how. When police tried to intervene, they traced the calls back to the Kuykendalls' own phones. It didn't make sense. Even when the phones were switched off, the calls seemed to come from their own numbers. With every lead hitting a dead end, the Kuykendalls began to believe something even darker was at play. The callers weren't just threatening them. They were watching, listening, through the very devices they relied on. And it wasn't just the Kuykendalls. Other families in the neighborhood were being targeted too. All their lives disrupted, their safety stolen. The callers could see, hear, and even record their every move. In the end, the calls stopped as suddenly as they had started, leaving behind only fear, unanswered questions, and the haunting knowledge that someone or something had wormed its way into their lives, prying open their most private moments.